Hi, it's Emily with Emily Talks. Welcome back to my channel. I want to start off with a moment of gratitude. First to myself for being the person who chooses to come here and spread this message of growth. And then also to y'all, because you want to come here and commune with me. And growth is important to you. Health is important to you. And you come here to be part of this message. That's really awesome. So thank you. So today I want to go over this concept of focusing on growth. The other day I made a video about a serious win that I had in my life, where I had a whole day of winning after a week period of really struggling. Like I was sitting on my couch, hungry, feeling nauseous because I was hungry, having headaches because I was hungry. And I was doing this for days in a row where I wouldn't get up and feed myself because of the distress that I was going through. And it took me some time to recognize, like, oh my goodness, I'm depressed, simply because of the particular situations that I was experiencing. And I struggled for a week with having a hard time moving at all, much less feeding myself. That's tough. And then after having that time, I refocused myself, I recalibrated myself, and I chose to get up and make a difference. And I decided to do a video on introspecting my win. And I'm going to link it down below. And I'm going to break up that video into several different concepts, because even while I was doing the video, I was talking about, these are my specific experiences for today, but I know I can boil them down into principles so that I could share it with you guys in a way that makes more sense than just talking about my specific experience with these things, because I wasn't talking about it in terms of principle. I just walked through what my day looked like and what it looked like to make these changes in my life, and how I had this amazing experience because of all these changes. But I didn't yet understand what was the principle driving it, because giving y'all the principle will be able to allow you to apply it in your life without having to look at the specific situations that I share as examples. So I'm going to end up breaking that video down into several different other videos, but I first want to focus on how I made a change in my life for the good and where that started, because that's kind of the first step. I mean, beyond being aware and caring about what's going on in this world and my place within it, caring about then what is good is the orientation that I want to have. Because what is good is going to bring me life. It's going to bring me thriving. So a few weeks back, something that first got me thinking about this was I watched a video from Robert Nasir. He does a bit on Ayn Rand Center UK, where he has a series called Life on Earth. And I'm going to link that down below into the description. He had a particular video on loyalty. And in the video, he took a moment to have a quote from, and I know this is quite derivative. There's a video that I watched where there was a quote from some other guy from a different video, but I'm going to link all this down below because it's such cool information, and there's lots of really amazing people out there who have fantastic ideas, and I just glean from them and apply them in my life. So in this video that Robert Nasir does on loyalty, he has a part where he quotes Leonard Peikoff. Leonard Peikoff did a lecture series on the moral foundations of government, and within that, he had this part on justice, and justice is first for the good. Justice isn't necessarily, it's first for the good. Yes, it is to be able to say when someone is bad and say, hey, justice needs to be served, but first for the good. And part of the way that he talks about that is not just telling people that they are wrong, but when someone is right, tell them so they could do more of that, so they could be assured of themselves when they are right. And why is that? Why do we first want to talk about when somebody is right? Why do I want to focus on the good? So there's an idea out there of, learn from your mistakes, right? We all think of learn from our mistakes. There's also another saying of, don't make the same mistakes of others, learn from the mistakes of others. Well, let's say that I'm not making a mistake. Let's say that I'm just doing something neutral. Is that the thing that I want in my life, to just be neutral? To just kind of exist and float along, do no harm? That's really it. No. I want to thrive. I want to fill my life with greatness, with joy, with wonder, with amazement, with awesomeness. I'm sorry, that kind of sounds funny. Awesomeness. I want that in my life. I don't just want to, not do bad. Oh, well, at least I'm not doing bad. No, I want to do great. And I don't find out about greatness by avoiding what's bad. I find out about greatness by looking at greatness itself, by looking at what's good and focusing on it and understanding it deeper. When it comes specifically to changing experiences after developing PTSD, this ties in perfectly with my message about neural networks and about purposefully changing neural networks over time through intention. I think a lot about how I want to change the neural networks in my brain. That when I have a stimulus, an outside experience that to me triggers my memories of trauma, the outside experience reflects back to some other time where there was trauma, and then my brain lights up in ways saying, this is dangerous. You're in danger. You're in trouble. You should be scared. You should be hiding. You should be running. You should be protecting yourself. You should be fighting. When really I'm just looking at my pile of dishes. Like, what's going on here? And, it's hard to wrap your head around, or, for y'all, how do I get triggered by a pile of dishes? Well, there was a lot of trauma around dishes in particular, where there was a lot of punishment and humiliation and subjugation that had to do with doing dishes properly in the right way. There was just a lot of trauma around cleaning, but dishes in particular, about control with how to do them and in which way, and then shaming us in the way that we did them, particularly with my little brother, and having to watch him suffer through that experience. And, just being grateful that it wasn't me that was going through it, which is also, it's really disgusting to look back on this experience of, seeing my little brother in this place of hurt that I had also experienced, and feeling grateful that it wasn't me, because he was the one who usually had to do the dishes. And so there's just like this whole thing around dishes that is really upsetting. And I don't want to feel that way when I walk up to my dishes, obviously, right? I want to walk up to my dishes and I want to feel hope, and I want to feel happiness for caring for myself. I want to feel joy in cleanliness. I want to look at the things that I have bought for my home, because dishes are fun, man. Like, if I have pretty dishes that I remember when I bought for myself that dish, and then I thought about it and I put it in my cart, I think through choosing my dishes. And when I care for them, I build up on that feeling of goodness. And all of that comes down to neural networks. I have an outward experience, and it brings up thoughts and memories and feelings inside of me that respond to that experience. So if you think of it in the sense of outward sensory experience, I see something. My brain interprets that. There is a neural connection, a neural pathway where my brain has something outside that it's processing, and then it'll light up different areas of my brain that associate with the thing that I've just experienced. And with trauma, there's a lot of associations that happen, particularly with complex trauma, which means lots of instances of trauma over time, that it wasn't one great event, it was lots of small events or lots of big events repeatedly that create these strong neural networks in the brain. And the particular type of trauma that I experienced is complex trauma. I have complex PTSD. The thing with this is that there's tons of neural connections that were strengthened over time, where I have this outward experience and then a strong response in my brain of fear, trying to escape, trying to run away, trying to protect myself, high alert, blah, 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 all kinds of stuff. To change the neural networks, I need to be purposeful that when I have this stimulus, I think in my brain of what I want to think. So there's the automatic thoughts that come from having lots of going back over those same thoughts and feelings over and over and over. And then there's purposeful thoughts where I say, okay, I'm looking at these dishes and I want to think of a time when I did well doing the dishes. And this is actually what EMDR is based off of, a type of therapy that I'm going to link down below. If you have somebody who can do this therapy with you, great. If not, you can be able to follow the steps that I'm talking about. I'm also going to link down below some information on grounding techniques, because there's a specific type of thing that you do during a grounding technique where you focus on lots of specific information coming in from your senses to help you calm down. And I think there's something really powerful about that. When I go to create these new neural networks in my brain where I have an experience and I want it to bring up certain things in my brain that are positive, I try to tie it into as much sensory information as possible so that when I come across that sensory information later, it interconnects with the larger web of feeling happy. So when I think of doing the dishes, I focus in on the colors, the patterns, the texture, the sound of doing the dishes, the smell of the dish soap. I do all kinds of things to be able to help me strengthen that experience of happiness. One of the things that I did also, my therapist brought up, just do 5 dishes. Now he meant it in the sense of do 5 dishes, go away, come back and do 5 until the sink is empty. And I haven't gotten to that part yet. But what I have done is I've done 5 dishes, or I've done the dishes that are necessary, and then been very happy with the fact that the small amount of space that I needed to work in, with the small amount of dishes that I needed for that, are done. And I took a moment to look at that situation, to lock in that visual, and to feel happy about it. Guess what? Now when I think of my dishes, I can't yet look at the full measure of my dishes and feel okay. I still feel overwhelmed and upset and scared. But when I think of those 5 dishes that I can do, I think of the moments of when I happily am making food. Making food for me is like, my love language, serving people and feeding them and making really delicious food for others, and making food for myself too, just nourishing. That's a sort of act of love for me. So going through and cooking is something that I already associate with positivity. So I'll think of cooking a meal and serving on the dishes and eating off of clean stuff. I think of all of that positivity that my brain already has, and I tie that in. So when I think of my dishes now, I think of the 5 dishes that I can do, and I feel hope. I feel joy to go get those dishes done. I don't feel the fear and the panic in trying to get away. And this takes time. You know, the issues that started with the dishes started when I was a young teenager, so 13, 14 years old, because that was after my mom married my stepdad, and that's tied in specifically. You know, he had a lot of things about control with routines, and now that I'm older, I have a really great relationship with my stepdad, and I understand way more about that. He kind of walked into a situation with being a parent to 6 teenagers all at once. Not 6, 5, but, you know, potato, tomato. And he had to walk into that situation and figure out how to parent teenagers all at once. And I have a lot of grace for him about that experience. So regardless, it caused a lot of issues when he came into the scene after doing things a certain way for so long and having this immense need for control. He has a particular hurt inside of him that causes him to feel very, very driven to have particular rituals that he goes through. And if we weren't doing the same rituals as himself, it would cause a lot of conflict for him, a lot of upset internally, and that would come out in controlling the way that we were allowed to do things. And there was a lot of humiliation that was attached because of his religious beliefs. So, you know, all of the grace and love to my stepdad. He's a really fantastic guy who unfortunately did some really terrible things out of his own hurt. And, you know, I'm going to talk in another video about the hurt that I have brought on my son through the hurt that I hold on to. There's nothing that would be constituted as abuse, but it still is something that hurts him. And I still see that in terms of, you know, if it's going to severely impact his ability to be a whole adult who is able to deal with his world. That's kind of how I define abuse, even if it's not something that would get him taken away. So, you know, I hold a lot of grace and a lot of forgiveness and love for my stepdad because of that. But, you know, all of these experiences came together to create this upset over dishes. And through my very careful thoughts, in the last few months, I've changed the way that I think about dishes. So all the way from 14 until, you know, halfway through my 35th year, I'm about to be 36 soon, I had these horrible associations with dishes. And I am changing that through changing my neural networks. Every time that I thought of the upset, you know, at first I experienced upset over years and years of approaching the dishes and having my stepdad be part of that association. And then later on, I went into my adult life and I would remember the upset. That strengthened the neural connection where I would see the dishes, and every time I remembered the upset, it made that connection stronger. Even when I started to become aware of where that upset came from, it wasn't just that I was lazy and didn't want to do the dishes. I had to explore, why do I not want to do these dishes? Oh, okay, I see why. So it was important to understand, but as I started to realize why, I again was strengthening those connections. Going back through and thinking of what was good and focusing on the good as I had the experience to really think about it. It created that first connection. And as I think about it more and more, that connection strengthens. And as I strengthen that connection by thinking in that manner, the previous connections, those previous neural networks get used less, and they're, you know, the automatic reaction of the brain to do these connections and recall this memory, that weakens, that gets undone. That's what, when doctors talk about neuroplasticity, that's what that means, is that you can change neural networks in your mind through purposeful thought. And that is the whole thing around focusing on the good. Justice is first for the good. Say when something is good and recognize it and praise it. Because I think about the good, and I just talked about, the neural networks with particularly the dishes, but there was a lot of different things that I did yesterday that changed. And I talked about, or not yesterday, but a few days ago, and I talked about in my video too about how, when I look at certain types of lists, that I end up being triggered, or if I try to implement certain routines, I'm triggered. So I have to be very careful about what I'm implementing so that I can change my ideas over time. I implemented, something along those lines as well, to allow me to say, okay, I've taken my time, now I need to move on. So there's lots of videos that I'm going to be following up with on this, about giving myself grace to be imperfect, about gentle parenting, about being mindful. There's lots of different videos that are going to come from this one video from the other day. So check out all of that in the description as far as the other video is concerned. Maybe I'll compile this all into one playlist, so there's a lot of context there. But, start out with focusing on the good, so that you can strengthen that, so you can create the neural networks that you want in your brain, so your brain works for you to be awesome, to be great, to be a hero. I hope this helps, because I know it helps me. Namaste, my friends.